so we're going to start with a little bit of wrist mobility. So bring your arms out to your sides with a 90-degree bend at the elbow. Your upper arms are going to stay hugged in close to your torso. Your forearms are going to stay right about parallel to the ground. We'll make a fist with the fingers and draw the knuckles up towards your biceps. Squeeze them as far as you can towards your upper arms. Then slowly start to draw the knuckles down toward the ground. And as the knuckles start to point toward the ground, open your fingers, spreading them out nice and wide, trying to pull your fingernails to reach your elbow. So really pulling into that wrist extension. Then slowly start to curl back into the fist, rolling your knuckles back up towards your biceps, curling in as far as you can, and then slowly uncurling, spreading the fingers out wide, flashing the palm forward, pulling those fingernails back toward your elbows. Keep going back and forth here. So the key with this mobility work is how hard you make yourself work. So I can do this all day long and it doesn't really do anything. But if I really go slowly and press into the end range of motion as hard as I can, and think about like the air around your hands, imagine it were really thick and hard to move through. So it makes it, you have to kind of make this challenging for yourself. Good, let's do one more, curling up toward the biceps, and then rolling the knuckles down toward the ground, opening, spreading the fingers wide, reaching your fingernails to touch your elbows, and release. You can shake your wrists out a little bit there. Then we'll come right back into that same position. So elbows at 90 degrees, upper arms stay hugged towards your torso. We'll start with palms flipped up. We're just gonna have palms up and then flip them down, moving back and forth. So you're flashing your palms up to the ceiling and then down to the ground. So if you look at your hands, you'll see your palms and your wrists are moving, but really this rotation is coming from the elbow. You're rotating your forearm bone. Your hands and your wrists are just kind of moving along for the ride. So let's slow that down a little bit and really, again, squeeze into the end of the rotation. So when you flip your palms up, really trying to roll the pinky side edge of your palm up toward the ceiling. And when you flip your palms down, trying to roll the thumb side edge down. Keeping the upper arms stationary. Now, next time your palms flip up, keep rolling through that rotation as you start to draw your fingertips up toward your shoulders, squeezing all the way up. Then flip your palms forward and continue in that rotation as you start to lower your fingertips down toward the ground. Good. Palms flip forward again, continuing to try to move into that rotation as you draw your fingertips up to your shoulders. Flash the palms forward, continue trying to roll the thumbs down toward the ground as you straighten your arms. Good, keep going here. Again, this I can do all day long, but what really makes this challenging is the going slowly and really trying to continue rotating at the elbow throughout the whole duration of the movement. Okay. Release your arms, you can shake them out a little bit. We're gonna move into the shoulder blades. So arms are just gonna rest by your sides. Hands can be however is comfortable for you. I generally like to make fists, especially when I'm in this position, because otherwise my fingertips touch the ground. Doesn't matter how your hands are, just be intentional about it and try to keep the same position throughout the whole exercise. So we'll start by squeezing the shoulders up towards your ears, elevating the scapula. Keep your shoulders up, squeeze them back behind you. So they're up and back. Keep them squeezing behind you as you slowly lower them down. Keep them down as you draw them forward, protracting. Keep your shoulders forward as you squeeze them up. Keep them up as you draw them back. Keep them back as you lower. Keep them down as you go forward. Keep them forward as you squeeze up. them up as you squeeze back. Keep them back as you lower. Keep them down as you go forward. Switch directions. Keep your shoulders down. Squeeze them together behind you, retracting. Keep them retracted as you shrug them up to your ears. Keep them up as you protract, drawing your shoulders forward. Keep them forward as you lower. Do 2 more like this, really squeezing into the end range of motion. I like to think about making like a square or a rectangle with the heads of my shoulders. So after you've done 3 in this direction, we're gonna do the same thing but with the arms in a slightly different position. So reach your hands out in front of you. You want your fingertips to be just a little bit wider than your shoulders, your palms facing one another. So you can imagine like you're holding a big beach ball or something out in front of you. We'll do the same thing. So squeezing the shoulders up to the ears, keeping them up as you squeeze them back, keeping them squeezing behind you as you lower down, keeping them down as you round forward, keeping them forward as you come up, up and back, keeping them back as you go down, down and forward. Do 1 more in this direction, and then we'll switch directions. So do 3 in the opposite direction. Pay attention to your sternum as you do this. We're trying to keep the spine in the same position and just move the shoulder blades around the spine. So your head should stay right on top of your pelvis, your sternum in the same position. Okay, lower your arms, shake them out. We're gonna get into our thoracic spine. So that's the part of your spine between your neck and your low spine, kind of around where your rib cage is here. Wrap your arms around you like you're giving yourself a big hug, reaching your fingertips toward the inner edges of your shoulder blades. We're gonna round through the upper spine, reaching the elbows down, almost like they're reaching toward your belly button. So notice I'm just making like a little letter R with my upper body. I'm not rolling all the way down to bring my elbows down to my thighs. That's more of a lumbar spine. We're trying to just stay in the mid spine here. So rounding down, elbows are reaching down towards your belly button. We're gonna keep the elbows heavy and just rotate to bring the elbows over toward your right hip. Good, so now we're in spinal flexion with a twist. Then elbows roll down through the center and over to the left hip. Good, roll back and forth here, keeping the spine rounded forward. Holding on to that lowercase letter R in your upper spine. And just dragging the elbows from one hip to the other. And next time you come to your right hip, pause. I want you to open your chest up toward the front, bringing your right shoulder towards your right hip. So now you're in a perfect side bend here. Then we'll go back into that twist. So draw your elbows back down toward the right hip. Roll down through center, over to the left hip. And same thing here, square your chest toward the front. Drop your left shoulder to your left hip. Coming into that side bend to the left. Twist, lowering the elbows towards your hip. Roll down through center. Bring the elbows over to the right side. From here, square your chest off toward the front. Come straight into that side bend, right shoulder dropping down toward the ground. Twist again, elbows come back to the frontal hip bone. Roll down through center, over to the left side. Rotate, opening your chest toward the front. Drop your left shoulder to left hip. Opening up the right side body. Twist again, lowering the elbows to your frontal hip. Roll down through center. We'll do 1 more set. Elbows come all the way over to right hip. Drop the right shoulder toward the right hip. Bring the elbows back to the right hip. Roll down through center, all the way to the left. Drop left shoulder to left hip. Elbows back to left hip. Elbows back through center. And then come back up to a neutral position. Let's switch which arm is on top. We're gonna be rolling around the back side now. So just lift, your elbows are gonna stay heavy and connected to your chest. We're gonna lift the chest up just a little bit toward the the ceiling till you get a little opening on the front side of the spine. And we'll roll between those same end positions. So coming over, dropping the right shoulder to the right hip, coming back to that side bend, then lifting the elbows, rolling around through center and over to the left side. Good, so you're rolling back and forth between side bend on each side, lifting the elbows up to the ceiling. As you do this, you want to try and keep your low spine fairly steady. So I'm not coming too far back. I'm just lifting my elbows a tiny bit, opening up through the front side of the thoracic spine. Okay, release your arms, shake them out a little bit. Let's come onto our backs. Have your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor, so like you're in the bottom of a bridge position. Feel your sacrum on the ground, that's the triangular bone at the base of your spine. I want you to point your tailbone down to the ground, exaggerating the curve in your low spine. Then tuck your tailbone under, reaching it up toward the sky, rounding through the low back. Move back and forth here a few times, reaching the tailbone down and up. It's like you're doing a little mini cat-cow just in the low spine here. Good. Next time your tailbone points up, pause and lift your right frontal hip bone up just a little bit higher than the left. Then lower it down, reach the left hip bone up. Lower, reach the right hip bone. Lower, lift the left hip bone. So keeping your tailbone tucked under, reaching up toward the ceiling. I like to think about rolling a marble back and forth between the frontal hip bones. And notice if you're rocking side to side, maybe putting more weight on one shoulder blade and then the other, and see if you can reduce that so that the movement is just in the pelvis and the low spine. Good, release that, reach the tailbone down to the ground, exaggerate the curve in the low spine, then tuck your tailbone back up to the ceiling, rounding slightly in the low back. From here, keep this position with the tailbone tucking under, hike your right hip up towards your ear. So you're making your right side waist a little bit shorter, then make the left waist a little shorter. Right side shorter and left side shorter. Keep going. So we're hiking the hip, elevating the hip, squeezing it up towards your shoulder on either side. Then come back to neutral. Reach the tailbone down to the ground, exaggerating the curve in the low spine. Reach your fingertips up toward the ceiling. Keep your arms reaching like this. Tuck your tailbone under and then start to pull your spine up off the floor, one vertebrae at a time. So you're coming into a version of a bridge position. This is different from a yoga bridge where typically we have our arms underneath us, the shoulder blades are squeezing together. We're reaching our tailbone down toward the ground, really opening up and extending through the front side of the spine. In this position, your tailbone stays tucked toward the ceiling, your shoulder blades stay wide, your hips are a little bit lower, and your spine is in a little bit more of a neutral position. Keeping the tailbone tucked, roll yourself down one vertebrae at a time. When you get down, reach your tailbone down to the ground, exaggerating the curve in the low spine. Curl the tailbone under again and peel yourself up one vertebrae at a time. So roll up and down a few times here. You can keep the arms lifted if you want, or you can release them to the ground. It's really just to show you what it's like to have your shoulder blades apart. So if you lower your arms down, just make sure that you're not squeezing your shoulder blades together. Next time you come up, pause, hold your hips elevated, and tuck and untuck your tailbone. Reaching your tailbone down to the ground, reaching it up to the ceiling. Just doing little baby cat-cows in the low spine. you tuck your tailbone up, roll yourself down one vertebrae at a time, reach the tailbone down toward the ground, roll it back up to the ceiling, lift yourself back up into a bridge position. Now lift the right hip bone higher than the left, lift the left bone higher than the right. Lift the right hip, lift the left hip, passing that marble back and forth again. Keep your tailbone tucked under as you do this. Take a look at your thigh bones. Notice how much they're moving and see if you can try and minimize how much they move so that your knees stay the same distance apart the whole time. Good, come back to a neutral position, roll yourself down one vertebrae at a time, reach your tailbone down to the ground, curl your tailbone back to the sky, lift yourself up again. This time, hike your right hip up towards your ear. Then hike your left hip. Hike the right hip, shortening the right waist. Hike the left hip, shortening the left waist. Moving back and forth here. It's like you're pulling one knee just shy of the other one as you hike your hip up. Watch your thigh bones as you do this. Try to keep them parallel as you hike opposite hips. Come back to neutral, roll yourself all the way down, reach your tailbone down to the ground. Then curl your tailbone back up to the sky, but stay on the ground. I want you to feel your whole sacrum flat on the ground. So you should feel the whole triangle here. Straighten your left leg out. Keep your right knee bent. Draw your heel a little bit closer towards your glutes so you have a nice tight bend in the knee. Bring your fingertips to your frontal hip bones. And I just want you to rock the knee side to side. You're windshield wipering the knee side to side. But as you do this, I want you to really pay attention to the relationship between your sacrum and the ground. And I want you to try and keep the weight evenly distributed from side to side as you move your knee side to side. So as your knee goes out to the right, you'll have to really fight to keep the left side of your sacrum down. As your knee crosses the midline, you'll have to fight to keep the right side of the sacrum down. So it's just as much attention on moving the leg through internal and external rotation as there is on holding the sacrum steady on the ground. Good. Release that leg, bend the left leg in, draw your heel nice and close to your glutes, find your frontal hip bones, tuck your tailbone up to the ceiling, feel your sacrum on the ground, and then windshield wiper your foot again side to side. So really noticing if you lift one side of your pelvis as you move your leg. Using your stabilizer muscles to keep your sacrum connected to the ground. Really trying to squeeze into the end of your internal and external rotation here. Good. Release that leg, flip over onto your belly. We're going to do a similar thing working with internal and external rotation on our bellies, but this time our hips are in a slightly different position. So we just had our hips flexed a little bit. Now they're in more of a neutral or extended position. So your forehead's going to be down on the ground. You can use your hands as a pillow if you like. Bring your legs close toward the midline so they're no wider apart than hip distance. Bend your right leg, flex at your ankle. Feel your frontal hip bones on the ground. This is what you want to pay attention to as you start to windshield wiper your foot side to side. So notice if your weight shifts from one hip to the other. If it gets a little bit heavier as you move your foot on one side and then switches to the other side, and see if you can try to reduce that as much as possible. So trying to keep the pelvis in a neutral position as we roll the thigh bone in internal and external rotation. Moving slowly and noticing how much movement is available to you here. So again, I can do this all day, like I'm like laying in the park having a picnic or something. But if I really concentrate on keeping my pelvis steady and really squeeze into the end range of motion, that's what really works your hips. Switch sides, release the right foot to the ground, bend the left leg, flex your ankle, drawing your toes toward your knee. Feel your frontal hip bones on the ground, and then start to windshield wiper your foot. So moving slowly again, squeezing, an internal rotation and external rotation as you listen to the contact between your hip bones and the floor. Okay, release that foot to the ground. We're gonna come back to the shoulders. You guys stay on your bellies. I'm just gonna show you what we're going to be doing. So watch me do this first, and then I'll cue you through it. So you'll be lying on your backs with your hands behind you, somewhere around your sacrum, with your palms up to the ceiling. So your arms are making a diamond shape here. We'll start by lifting the elbows off the ground, squeezing the shoulder blades together. Then we'll lift the hands off the back as high as they go, keeping the upper arms where they are. We'll reach the fingertips back, straightening the arms into, this will feel kind of like a Superman position on your belly. Thumbs are in toward the midline right now. We're gonna roll the thumbs down to the ground and then out to the outer edges of the mat, opening your palms toward the front of the mat. We'll do a huge, this is like a butterfly stroke, bringing your arms all the way up into a Y position. Once you get here, the upper arms will stay in the same position. You'll bend the elbows, reach the fingertips to touch the back of your head. Straighten your arms out again, flip your palms back for a big breaststroke to come back into the Superman position. Bend the elbows back to the diamond and then lower the hands down. So this is going to be a really slow movement. That's what's really going to make this difficult. So listen to me as I cue you through this. Start with your head, your forehead on the ground. Bend your elbows, bring your hands behind your back so your sacrum, your hands, are resting on your sacrum with your palms up to the ceiling. Start by squeezing the elbows together. Feel the shoulder blades move toward your spine. Then lift the hands, float them just above the sacrum. Keep your upper arms where they are and just straighten the arms, reaching your fingertips back behind you. Now roll your thumbs down toward the ground and then roll your palms all the way toward the front of your mat. Lifting the arms as high as they go, make a big circle out to the side like you're doing a huge butterfly stroke, moving slowly, coming all the way up until your hands come into a Y position. Keep your arms elevated. Bend at the elbow, float your fingertips just behind your head, then come back to straight arms. Flip your palms toward the back. Do a huge breaststroke all the way back into that Superman position. You'll finish with your palms facing up toward the ceiling, fingertips reaching kind of toward the back corners of your mat. Keep the arms lifted, bend at the elbows, float your hands above your sacrum. Again, pause here, then lower the hands, lower the elbows, and rest. So you should need, this should be so hard that you should need a little rest in between rounds here. We'll start again. Squeeze the elbows together, squeeze the shoulder blades together. Lift the hands away from your sacrum. Keep the upper arms where they are, extend them straight. Reach the fingertips behind you. Roll your palms toward the front of the room. Then, this should take about 6 counts between this position and bringing your fingertips all the way up into a Y position. And once you get into the Y position, keep the upper arms where they are, bend the elbows, float the fingertips behind your head. Come back to straight arms, flip your palms toward the back of your mat, huge breaststroke, again about 6 counts. Make it all the way back to that Superman position. Your palms flipped up up toward the ceiling, arms as high as they go. Then bend the elbows, float your hands above your sacrum for a second, then lower the hands, lower the elbows. Let's do one more of those. Squeeze your shoulder blades together, squeeze your elbows together, float your hands, straighten the arms, roll your palms forward, huge 6-count butterfly stroke, coming all the way up into a Y position, bending the elbows, bring the fingertips to the back of the head, reach the fingertips out, straightening the arms again into the Y position, roll your palms back, huge 6-count breaststroke. Coming back to that Superman position, palms flip up, arms raise as high as they'll go, upper arms stay where they are, bend the elbows, float your hands above your sacrum, lower the hands, lower the elbows. Good. Take a rest here. You can release the arms, find a position that feels comfortable for you for a moment. Okay, then press yourself back into a child's pose. And from child's pose, I want you to come up into a tabletop position. We're going to step the right foot in between the hands and come up into a low lunge. So in this low lunge, we want to have kind of 90-degree angles everywhere. So your hips are over your back knee, your front knee is over your front ankle. We're going to take the forearms and rest them down onto your thigh. And just shift your weight forward and backward. So we're working on our ankles now. This is not so much a hip opener as it is an ankle opener. So just shifting your knee forward so it goes a little bit beyond your toes and then back to 90 degrees. Good, the next time your knee goes forward, hold here for a moment. And see if you can find the end range of this stretch for you. This is your ankle flexion. So end range of ankle flexion. And then just lift the heel off the ground about 1 inch or 2 and lower. Lifting and lowering the heel back and forth. So we're not going for full range of motion here where you come all the way up onto the ball of your foot. We're just kind of activating the calf muscle as we're stretching it. So do about 5 lifts and lowers here, and then bring your heel back to the ground. See if your knee can go a little bit farther forward. Take a couple deep breaths here, breathing in through the nose all the way down into your belly. Long, slow exhales. And then same thing, just lift and lower the heel a couple times, about 1 inch, sorry, not a couple times, do at least 5 times, about 1 inch or 2 up off the ground. So you should feel your calf muscles starting to work a little bit here. And then lower your heel back down to the ground. Notice if you have any more range of motion available to you now. If you can move your knee a little bit farther forward, keeping your heel in contact with the ground. Good, come back up to that 90-degree angle in your knees. Bring your hands down onto the ground to frame your foot. Float your foot and then step it out to the side. So you're in this weird tabletop position with one leg out to the side. I don't even know what to call this, like a kickstand out to the side. And I just want you to shift the hips back like you're going into child's pose and then forward almost into like a modified plank. So hips are moving forward and backward. And as you do this, the tendency when you go back is to round your spine, tuck your tailbone under like you're doing a child's pose. And I want you to resist that by sticking your tailbone out behind you, staying broad through the chest. Think about shining a light from the center of your chest down between your hands. Staying broad in the collarbones. We're just working a little bit in our hips here as we do this. The farther toward the front of your mat that your foot is, the more intense this stretch will be on your inner thigh. The farther back it is, the easier it will be. Okay, release that leg, come back to a tabletop position. Let's step the left foot forward now. So finding that 90-degree low lunge, bring your forearms down to rest on your thigh here. Just shift your knee forward and backward a few times. So coming into that ankle flexion, coming out of it. And next time your knee comes forward, hang out here for a second. Then start to lift and lower that heel just an inch or two up off the ground. Starting to heat up that calf muscle. And after you've done at least 5 rounds, lower your heel down to the ground. See if your knee has any more space to move just a little bit more forward. Keeping your heel firmly rooted to the ground. Take a few rounds of breath here. Deep inhale in through the nose, down into your low belly. A long, slow exhale. One more deep breath in through the nose. Long, slow exhale. Let's lift and lower the heel again. And then bring the heel back down to the ground. Notice if there's any more space for the knee. Move a little bit further forward. Keep your heel firmly rooted on the ground. Good, then start to come out of it. Bring both hands down to the ground. We'll kick that left foot out to the side in this weird tabletop position again. Hands starting out right underneath your shoulders. We'll just shift the hips back toward the right heel and forward. So again, tuning into your spine here, noticing the desire to round the tailbone down to the ground. I'm trying to counteract that by reaching your tailbone back behind you, lifting your chest, opening your chest wide toward your hands, staying broad through the collarbones. Okay, bring your leg back into a tabletop position, flip around, let's come to lie on our backs. And this is where you're going to want your shoes handy. Okay, so let's see here. Let's start on the right side. So grab your, I like to use the opposite shoe so that it mirrors the bottom of my foot. So grab the shoe that mirrors the bottom of your right foot. We're going to bend the knee into the chest and bring the shoe to rest on the bottom of your foot here. So this is a bit of a precarious prop. It's going to fall off. It's okay. We'll just put it back on. Let's start with the left knee bent. Makes this a little bit easier. And I just want you to straighten and bend the leg. And as you bend the knee, think about the knee coming down to rest on the outside of your shoulder on the right side. So it's like your thigh bone is kind of hugging around the side of your torso. So you can stay here with your left knee bent, or if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, you can straighten the left leg down on the ground. Just adds a little more stretch into your hip flexors making this just a little bit more difficult. So this is something you can do with a yoga block on your foot. That's what I would typically do in a studio, but I don't know if everybody has those at home. I also mentioned at the beginning of class that you can do this with a towel, like a folded up towel on your foot or a folded up blanket. That's nice because it gives you a little bit of weight to work with also, and can be, when we start to move around, is a little bit easier of a prop to keep on your foot. Okay. Release that foot. Let's do the opposite leg. Your hip flexors are probably pretty tired by now. So bring the shoe to the bottom of your left foot. Let's start with the right knee bent, foot flat on the floor, and just bending and straightening the leg here. So think about drawing your elbow toward the outside edge of your shoulder, thigh bone, wrapping around the outside of your torso. And I mentioned this at the beginning of class, but I'm not sure if everybody was tuned in. When I do this work with shoes, I like to have a shoe that has a lower profile. So something like a tennis shoe, especially a high top tennis shoe, has, what do you call it, a higher, I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, it's going to be more likely to tip over side to side versus something that's a little bit lower, like a sandal. I have a Birkenstock type sandal right now. Is going to be a bit easier. Something like a flip-flop I've found to be the easiest because it doesn't really have any way of toppling over. You can keep your right knee bent, or you can straighten your leg out long. Once you get tired of that, you can release the shoe, set it to the side. So that was all warm up for our grand finale here, is what I like to call the shoe game. Some people call these, I've seen them called sushi rolls. Lots of funny names for this on the internet. I'm actually going to start with my left foot. You guys should start on your right. It's just easier for me to demo this on my left with how the camera is. So we're going to start lying on your back with the shoe on one of your feet. The idea is to roll all the way over onto your stomach and then onto your back, keeping the shoe on your foot, and then you roll all the way back to the starting position. So you'll start, this is something that you can play around with for the rest of the day, basically. So I'm going to start with the shoe on my left foot. I roll onto the opposite hip. I have to start to really bend my knee to roll all the way onto my belly, lowering the left hip down onto the ground. The key is to go really slowly, and I think it really helps to watch your foot, because you have to move your foot and your knee and your ankle and your toes in addition to your hips to keep the shoe on you. So once I'm on my belly, the best way to flip, to continue rolling onto my back, is to bend the foot, the knee, without the shoe on it, and that's going to come inside the shoe foot. See, I have to lift my toes here to keep the shoe on my foot, coming all the way onto my back, and then straightening that leg out. Now I'll go back, opening the knee out to the side, rolling onto my left hip, lifting my knee over my other leg with the shoe on it, coming back onto my belly, and then one last move, come all the way back onto my back. So this is extremely hard to do. I like it because it gives you something to focus on, and you don't really notice how much your hips are working to do this, but it really works all the muscles in your hips, really all the muscles in your leg, all the way down to your toes. So I'm gonna leave you guys to play around with that for as long as you like on your own. could share with us how it goes for you. If you want to take videos and post them to TRC's page, or you can post them on Instagram and tag me in them. Thank you guys very much for joining me for our mobility class today. This was very fun, my first time on Facebook Live. Please let TRC know what you thought about it. I have another class with TRC on Wednesday night. I think it's at 7:30. It's a yoga nidra, which is basically just a guided relaxation. It will be awesome for you if you are feeling any stress or anxiety, which is really common right now. I have a full teaching schedule online as well. If you want to see my schedule, this is my website. It's www.cjanemove.com. And my Instagram is cjanemove with underscrolls in between. I have my full schedule on my website and I post about it on my Instagram. So feel free to follow me there if you want to see more mobility classes. I have several of these types of classes a week. I'm also offering restorative yoga, some meditation, yoga nidra, and then what I usually teach at TRC is myofascial release. So that's a guided self-massage with therapeutic massage balls. I'm offering that on Sunday night on Zoom for $10. If you have all you need is a pair of massage balls. You can use tennis balls and a tube sock if you don't have them. And if you're interested in getting them, I can meet up with you somewhere if you're in the Triangle area and give you a pair that I have for sale. Okay, so that's it for me, guys. Let me know how the shoe game goes, how that feels on your hips, and I hope you have a great rest of your Monday.